I was carrying the heavy basket from the market when I turned the corner and saw the faded wooden sign swaying above Adler's Dry Cleaning. The air smelled of steam and fabric softener. I pulled the yellow claim ticket from my purse, just another errand my daughter-in-law Camille had pressed into my hand that morning. Inside, Gus Adler, the owner I had known for years, took the ticket and disappeared into the back. I waited, absent-mindedly running my fingers along the wicker handle of the basket, already thinking about what to cook for Lily and Mason, my 2 grandchildren. When Gus returned, he carried Camille's wool coat wrapped neatly in plastic, but instead of handing it to me, he glanced around the empty shop. His hand, calloused and trembling, gripped my arm. "Nora, come with me," he whispered urgently. Behind a worn curtain, Gus pulled open a drawer and showed me a small clear bag. Inside lay a transfer receipt with a figure so large it made my stomach lurch, and a photo of Lily and Mason, with jagged red circles scrawled over their innocent faces. "Take your grandchildren and leave this town before sunrise," Gus said, his voice breaking. "My name is Nora Whitfield. I am 62 years old, a widow, and for the past 3 years my life has revolved around my son Jake and his young family. When Jake married Camille, I welcomed her as my own daughter. She was polite, hardworking, and for a while, I believed she truly cared about building a home together with him. Jake works as an engineer and often travels for long stretches, leaving Camille and the children at home. Because of that, I naturally became the extra pair of hands, the one who picked up groceries, folded laundry, and drove Lily to her piano lessons. I didn't mind. In fact, I thought of it as my way of giving back after all the years Jake stood by me through my grief. But nothing in my years of sacrifice had prepared me for the moment at Adler's shop. When Gus pressed that plastic bag into my hand, I felt the foundation of my family crack. The photo of Lily and Mason marked in red seared into my mind like fire. If I was wrong, I risked tearing apart Jake's marriage. But if I was right and ignored it, the price could be my grandchildren's lives. The air behind the curtain felt thick, filled with the scent of bleach and hot steam. Gus's voice trembled as he held the bag closer for me to see. I forced myself to focus, my eyes tracing the numbers on the transfer receipt. It wasn't just money, it was millions wired to an offshore account, the kind of figure ordinary families like ours would never see in a lifetime. Beside the receipt lay the photograph. My heart clenched. It was Lily and Mason, smiling the way children do when they have no idea how cruel the world can be. But across their small faces, someone had drawn uneven red circles with a marker. The lines were angry, rushed, as if they carried intention far darker than simple scribbles. I looked at Gus, unable to speak. He shook his head slowly, his eyes glassy. "Nora, I've been in this business for 40 years. I know what dirty secrets look like when they're stuffed into coat pockets. This isn't just a forgotten paper. This is a warning, or worse, a plan." I wanted to argue, to convince myself it was a mistake. Maybe Camille had picked up someone else's mail. Maybe the photo wasn't meant the way it looked. But deep down, my stomach told me the truth. Gus's hand gripped mine tighter. "Don't wait until morning. Get those kids out now. If you stay, it may be too late." When I stepped out of Adler's shop, the world outside hadn't changed. Street vendors still called out their prices, a bus screeched to a stop, and children laughed as they chased each other down the sidewalk. Yet to me, everything felt unreal, as though I were walking through a dream where danger hid in every shadow. The bag in my pocket burned like a live coal. I couldn't stop seeing those red circles across Lily's and Mason's faces. My hands shook as I clutched the coat Camille had asked me to pick up. That evening, just as the sun dipped low, my phone buzzed with a message. "Unexpected meeting. I'll be very late. Please take care of the kids." Camille's words made my chest tighten. Was it really a meeting, or was she laying the groundwork for something else? I stood in the living room doorway, watching Lily and Mason build a house of blocks on the rug. Their innocent voices filled the silence, but all I could hear was Gus whispering before sunrise. I knew I couldn't wait. If I was wrong, I would look foolish. But if I was right, waiting could cost me everything. With trembling fingers, I dialed Marissa, the only friend I trusted completely. Marissa didn't ask questions. She simply said, "I'll call my brother. He drives nights. He's quiet. You can trust him." 10 minutes, her calm voice steadied me just enough to act. I moved quickly, trying not to alarm the children. In the kitchen, I packed a small bag with bread, cheese, and the cookies they loved, 2 water bottles, a few changes of clothes, Mason's toy car, and Lily's worn-out doll things they couldn't sleep without. I shoved everything into a suitcase, clumsy but quick. The lights outside flickered as I drew the curtains closed. My heart pounded so loudly I feared the children would hear it. When a text arrived, "The taxi is on the corner," I took a breath and forced a smile. "Lily, Mason, let's go for a little night ride," I whispered. Lily's eyes widened with surprise. Mason rubbed his eyes and complained he was sleepy, until I pressed a candy into his palm. His grin returned, as though nothing was wrong. I carried Mason, held Lily's hand, and stepped into the cool night. The taxi idled at the corner, headlights dimmed. The driver, a weary-looking man with kind eyes, opened the door. "To the bus station, please," I told him, clutching the suitcase like it was my last lifeline. The bus rumbled through the night, its engine drowning out my racing thoughts. I kept Mason asleep against my shoulder while Lily leaned against the window, staring at the blur of streetlights. By dawn, we reached Savannah, the city where I had once lived years ago. It felt like the only place left that might still shelter us. I carried the children into a small roadside motel. The room smelled faintly of mildew, its single lamp casting a weak glow over faded sheets. Lily asked when we would see her mother. I stroked her hair and whispered, "Soon, sweetheart. For now, we rest." But rest would not come for me. The photo, the red circles, the receipt, all of it throbbed in my mind like a drumbeat. By morning, I made a decision. I led Lily and Mason down familiar streets to Riverside Church, its bell tower rising over the square. Inside, the quiet stone walls seemed to absorb my fear. Pastor Alan Brooks recognized me instantly. His white hair gleamed under stained glass light, his eyes full of concern. "Nora," he said softly, "you didn't come here by chance. Tell me everything." Pastor Alan listened without interruption as I told him about the coat, the receipt, the photo. When I finally placed the plastic bag on his desk, his jaw tightened. After a long silence, he said, "Nora, this is beyond me. You need someone who understands the law." He promised to connect me with a young attorney named Paige Walters. Still, something gnawed at me. The evidence in that bag was damning, but I knew there had to be more hidden at home. If Camille was involved in something dangerous, she wouldn't have risked everything on one careless mistake. The next morning, I kissed Lily and Mason goodbye, leaving them with Marissa. My heart ached as I boarded the bus back to Milford. Every mile brought me closer to the house that had once been my refuge but now felt like a crime scene. When I slipped through the front door, silence pressed in. The living room was exactly as I'd left it, Camille's blanket draped over the couch, a half-empty coffee cup on the table. But I didn't linger. I went straight to the bedroom closet, pulled aside shoes and boxes until I found the small gray safe. I remembered Camille once laughing after too many glasses of wine, blurting out the code, May 12th, 2018, the day she married Jake. My fingers trembled as I turned the dial. With a final click, the heavy door swung open, revealing secrets I was never meant to see. Inside the safe, stacks of cash were bound in crisp bundles, more money than our family could ever explain. Beside them lay passports with unfamiliar names, each paired with Camille's photo disguised in different hairstyles. My pulse quickened as I pulled out a packet of 3 business-class tickets from Atlanta to Madrid reserved for Camille, Lily, and Mason. Jake's name was nowhere. At the bottom was a glossy photograph. Camille stood beside a man in a black suit, his arm around her waist, both smiling like partners at a celebration. On the back, in bold script, was written, MV. Back in Savannah, I laid the contents out before Paige Walters. Her sharp eyes scanned every page, then narrowed at the initials. She typed quickly on her laptop and turned the screen toward me. "Marco Velasquez," she said, her voice flat. "A name tied to money laundering and trafficking networks. This isn't a simple betrayal, Nora. This is a criminal operation." I felt the room tilt. It wasn't just about Camille wanting a new life. It was about selling my grandchildren into the hands of a man like Velasquez. Paige reached across the table, her voice firm. "We have to involve the federal agents. This is bigger than all of us." 2 federal agents arrived the next morning, Agent Nolan, tall and steady, and Agent Ruiz, younger but sharp-eyed. They studied the pile of evidence without a word at first, then exchanged a look that told me everything. This was serious, and it was real. Agent Nolan leaned forward. "Mrs. Whitfield, this isn't just about fraud. It's about children being targeted. Your grandchildren are in immediate danger." The words made my stomach twist, though I had already sensed the truth. "What can we do?" I whispered. Paige explained their strategy. The children would be placed in protective care with social workers. Meanwhile, the agents would set a trap. They would create the illusion that Lillian Mason had disappeared, forcing Camille and Velasquez to panic and reveal their next move. We'll monitor every call, every text, Agent Ruiz added. The goal is to catch them admitting what they intended to do. Once they do, we'll have them. I hated the thought of playing such a cruel game, but I also knew it was the only way. I looked out the window where Lillian Mason played with toys, blissfully unaware of the storm swirling around them. I swallowed hard, then nodded. Do whatever you must. Just keep them safe. That night, the motel room felt like the center of a storm. A small surveillance device glowed on the table, wires running into a laptop where Agent Ruiz typed furiously. Paige sat beside me, her face calm but her hands clasped tightly. I could hear Lillian Mason laughing faintly from the courtyard where a social worker kept them busy, and the sound both comforted and tore at me. The first message came close to midnight. Camille's text lit up the screen. Mom, where are you? Have you seen the kids? They're gone. I called the police. I'm terrified. My heart ached at her words, though I knew they were a lie. Davis shook his head, mouthing, do not reply. Moments later, Camille's phone connected to another number. Her voice came through the speaker, high-pitched with panic. Marco, the children are gone. I had everything ready, but I can't find them anywhere. A man's rough voice answered coldly. Calm down. We cannot back out now. The plane tickets are paid for, and the buyer is waiting. Without the merchandise, we are finished. The word merchandise cut through me like glass. Those were my grandchildren he was talking about, as if they were objects to be delivered. I dug my nails into my palms to keep from screaming. Agent Nolan whispered into his radio, Alpha team in position. Bravo team ready. Targets moving. The trap was about to close. Through the radio, sharp commands filled the silence. Federal agents. Hands up. Then came the pounding of boots on pavement, the beam of flashlights, and Camille's scream tearing through the night. No, this can't be happening, she cried, her voice breaking. I pressed my hands over my mouth as I listened to the chaos unfold. Another voice shouted, don't move, followed by the metallic snap of handcuffs. Marco Velasquez pinned near a white van. Camille sobbed, insisting they had made a mistake, but the evidence spilled from her purse: bundles of cash, false IDs, and the tickets to Madrid. In the surveillance van, Paige gripped my hand. It's over, Nora. They're caught. But my relief was tangled with grief. I had once believed Camille to be part of our family, someone I could trust with my son's happiness and my grandchildren's safety. Now, all I could see was a stranger willing to trade their lives for money and power. Outside, the sirens wailed, red and blue lights flashing against the motel walls. The storm had broken, but the damage was permanent. Weeks later, I sat in the heavy silence of a federal courtroom in Savannah. The benches were crowded with neighbors, reporters scribbling in notepads, and strangers who had come to witness justice. Lillian Mason sat beside me, unaware of the weight pressing down on the room. Camille entered in a beige prison jumpsuit, her hair tangled, her face pale. She looked nothing like the polished young woman who had once shared family dinners at my table. Marco Velasquez followed, his hands cuffed, his stare fixed on the floor. The prosecutor rose, his voice firm. Your Honor, this case involves money laundering, conspiracy to kidnap, and participation in a transnational criminal network. He laid out the evidence piece by piece, the transfer receipt projected on a screen, the passports, the tickets to Madrid with only Camille and the children's names. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. Then came the photograph: Lillian Mason with red circles scrawled over their faces. Gasps filled the courtroom. I pulled my grandchildren close, covering their eyes, whispering that everything was all right. Inside, I felt my heart shatter all over again. Finally, the recording of Camille's call played. Without them, what are we going to negotiate with? The words echoed like a confession. The courtroom fell into stunned silence as the truth settled in. When the trial ended, the judge's gavel still echoed in my ears as we returned to the small apartment in Savannah. That night, after Lillian Mason had fallen asleep with their toys scattered across the floor, Jake sat across from me at the kitchen table. His face was drawn, his hands restless as they traced the rim of a coffee mug. Mom, he began, his voice raw, I need to tell you something. I suspected Camille for a while. The late nights, the money disappearing, the way she guarded her phone. I wanted to believe she was faithful, that I was imagining things. I didn't want to tear apart our family. I reached across the table, placing my hand over his trembling one. "Jake, you weren't blind. You were hopeful. There's no shame in that." His eyes filled with tears. "I failed Lily and Mason. I should have protected them." "You're protecting them now," I told him firmly. "You still have time to give them the safe life they deserve." He nodded, resolve hardening in his expression. "I'm filing for divorce. Full custody. With you beside me, we'll build something new for them." The months that followed were not easy, but slowly a new rhythm began to take shape. Jake found steady work in Savannah, and we settled into a modest apartment near Forsyth Park. It was small, just 2 bedrooms and a narrow kitchen, but it became a sanctuary. Each morning I packed lunches while Jake braided Lily's hair and helped Mason tie his shoelaces. On Sundays we walked to the park. Jake kicked a ball across the grass with Mason while Lily rode her bike in circles around the fountain. Their laughter carried through the air, a sound I thought I might never hear again. At night, the walls filled with the ordinary noises of family life, the clatter of dishes, Jake reading bedtime stories, Mason's toy cars rolling across the floor. I taped Lily's drawings on the fridge. One picture showed the 4 of us holding hands under a red-roofed house, the sun shining overhead. It was simple, fragile, but it was ours, and in that fragile piece I began to believe we could heal. Looking back, I often ask myself how long the signs had been there, hidden in plain sight. The sudden absences, unexplained money, the guarded phone calls, clues I dismissed because I wanted to believe in family. If there is one lesson I carry, it is this: trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, pay attention. Write things down. Ask questions. Do not let fear of conflict blind you to danger. And if the situation grows larger than you can manage, seek help, whether from the law, a trusted friend, or a professional who understands how to protect children. Family should mean safety, not fear. Love sometimes requires courage, even when that courage tears apart the illusions we wanted to keep. My story is painful, but if it reminds just one person to look closer and act sooner, then perhaps it can save another child. As I sit here today, I know our family will never be the same. Betrayal leaves scars, but courage leaves something stronger. Hope. I learned that even when the storm rages from the people you once trusted most, you still have the power to stand and protect what matters. Lily and Mason are safe. Jake is rebuilding his life with more strength than I thought possible. And I have found peace in knowing that I did not stay silent. I chose to act. If you are watching this, I want you to remember, sometimes the hardest battles are fought inside our own homes. But silence never saves, it only feeds the darkness. Speak up, trust your instincts, and fight for the ones you love. If this story touched you, please like the video so it reaches others who may need it. Share it with someone you care about, and comment below where you're watching from. Your voice might be the light someone else is waiting for.